So this paper was all about non-dual response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and a lot of it came from Rupert's recent retreat at home. He's running another retreat at home now, so this mostly came from the previous one. So who would like to start? I expect most of you are in lockdown at the moment, so your lives might have changed quite a bit in the last few weeks.
Well, hello, Jenny. It's
hello, David. Hi.
lovely to see you. I never cease to marvel at this incredible technology. We can wave to you across the seas.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
It really is.
Mm.
And it's so nice to connect with people. I've got a couple of meetings that I connect with during the week, and it's just a marvelous thing for all of us who are sort of in lockdown, and we can have dinner parties on Zoom and having lots of fun. Yeah, I'm really. It's I suppose being a bit of an introvert, a little touch of extroversion, but basically introverted. I'm sort of adapted to this pretty well because it's a bit of the same old,
Mm-hmm.
Just not. I mean, I'm still very connected to my friends, and yet it's a wonderful time just to really do what I want to do, read and do some write some poems and all that sort of stuff. So strangely, I've actually felt really good since all of this retreat's been happening, and I'm sure a lot of it is due to the sort of non-dual approach to life and not seeing it as so much of a problem as it's just happening. And I really started to feel a sort of impersonal way of relating to everything. So it's, my baking a bit of sourdough bread, still able to play a bit of golf. So I don't know whether I'm in denial. I don't think so. Am I allowed to feel this happy?
I think you absolutely are. I will confess, David, I feel rather similar to you. I'm also mostly an introvert,
Yeah.
and um, I love solitude. But also, I'm living here, of course, with my husband, but we're not together all the day because I go for longer walks than he does, which is allowed here and very easy because I'm in the middle of the countryside, and life is very beautiful. But it's quite interesting what I found, David, when I've gone out for walks. Just there's a lot more people in the British countryside walking now, and so I will come in places where I think I would, well, previously I would never have met anyone. I will see people, and there's two extreme reactions, so polarized that it's hard to believe. And one reaction is that we both step aside for each other, so we keep a very safe distance. The UK government says 2 meters. Actually, scientifically, it should be 5 meters, which is quite a bit more. But anyway, I try to keep as far a distance as I can away from them. But another example, which is, well, similar things have happened several times, is someone came rushing past within about a foot of me, with less than half a meter of me, and running, and he was obviously a runner, and my husband was a bit ahead, and said, um, please don't run past people like that, because you're putting both yourself and them at risk. And he went completely berserk. He said, "You've ruined my day," and he just went into a tirade of rage,
Mm.
which was, despite my husband's very beautiful, gentle approach to him. And we get that, and we get notices put up on, in some of the villages. Why are you here? You are not allowed to drive to a walk. Well, of course, a lot of people like me walk to that particular village, but sometimes people do drive, and they need to. And the notice said it is against the law, and that is untrue. And you have these notices. As in one village, there was about 30 of them plastered everywhere. So there's a lot of this very polarized feeling, and I think to myself, well, how what can we do to heal that? What's possible for us to heal that? And sometimes, I mean, the notices, I take them down when I see them, which is an obvious thing because they're untrue. And my husband spoke to the man and spoke to him very nicely and had a longer conversation with him, where he said he was terribly depressed. Well, that's really no excuse for his behaviour and tirade of rage. But I think perhaps it will have moderated what he did next time. But it seems that there's so much feeling; it's very hard um, to kind of to really heal that rift.
Mm. Well, I mean, it's really proven that when you're running, you're expelling a lot more aerosol
That's
and
correct. Yes. Yeah.
infectious, isn't it? So you
Yes.
have to really assert yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so much about healing as just saying no. It's
Yeah. Well, yes.
not on, is it?
No, it
But
isn't.
one thing I have noticed is that vulnerable people, including members of my family, my kids, it's sort of exposing the fault lines in their personality. You know that all stuff's come bubbling up. You know, like my son's been a bit of a gambler, and he's had it under so-called control for
Mhm.
many years, but suddenly now he's got no distractions, and he's just done some crazy stuff, just
Oh
gambling
dear.
away,
Yes.
you know, much more than he can afford, and he's just
Mm.
gutted. He can't believe he's doing it.
Mm.
And I've heard this from several of my friends that you know, it's sort of people who really don't have it together are really cracking up. But and the opposite's true. I think if you're really, you know, able to be and let be, then it can be quite a joyous time. But it's quite amazing to see. I don't know if other people have noticed things like that.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is very hard, um, to for some people to just be quiet, because I think you're more on your own. And Rupert was talking about that last night in the current webinar that just started, and he quoted something from Blaise Pascal, which I can't quote, but basically what it says was that it's very hard for people just to sit for 5 minutes with themselves. And he talked about no resistance, not resisting anything. Whenever we find resistance, then we can always um, sink below that, and recognize that that's not what I am. That's just the mind resisting, and we can always go back, sink back to what we truly are. But of course, that's very difficult for someone who's never come across this teaching, and to explain it to them might be might be quite hard. But maybe that's an opportunity for you with your son. Is there any way you can introduce him to some of the ideas of this teaching in a way that he would find acceptable, not making it religious, not making it moral, but yeah, just introducing it in some form.
Mm. Well, the only opportunity I really get is playing golf with him, which is
Oh.
that we're allowed to do here because it's, you know, you're out in the open.
Yes,
And
yes. Not allowed here, interestingly.
yeah, I mean, he's very, very, very sensitive to because he's, you know, he's in his late 40s now, so
Hmm.
he's very sensitive to any sort of paternal, you know, sacrifice. So I can't go
Yes.
there, but it's just a quality of presence and just helping him sort of look more deeply, just by, you know, being. I've got to be very careful how I approach it, but yeah, I mean, I'd love to find a way. If anybody, you know, and you might have some advice at how do you go about opening that door to in a family? It's not easy, is it?
I I don't know. I don't have any family left really.
Mm,
So I've not had to deal with that
mm,
with that issue. With friends, of course, I do see. I have seen friends who are in difficulties because they've not let go of things, not gambling so much as yeah, other manifestations um, of a feeling of lack,
mm,
which is
mm,
really what gambling is, isn't it?
mm,
And the best they seem to manage is to suppress it, but suppressing it when you get a situation like this, which is a complete change for everyone, then all of those feelings that have been suppressed then suddenly come up to the surface. So suppressing it can actually make it stronger, and yet that's really the method that most of them have found to to deal with those problems in the past, and now that method no longer works. So I guess you start by just talking about happiness and
mm,
talking about the present moment. I think that helps. People can worry much more about the future or be upset about what's happened in the past. But if you take them right to the present moment now, and when you and I are talking, you say to them, um, I'm not feeling unhappy. Are you feeling unhappy? And and if they say they are, then you ask, well, what is there in your present experience um, which merits unhappiness,
mm,
and try to bring them back to now. And then if they can see that now is always there, it's that now never changes, that everything uh, that they're worried about, everything that is causing them distress, is really about the past or the future.
mm, mm. That's very helpful, Jenny. Yeah. One of
So,
the things I was quite proud of myself was he very subtly sort of implied that I was going to bail him out, but no way.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Those days are well and truly over. I'm amazed that he gave it a try. Um,
Yes.
but you know, I was able to do that. Normally, it can be a bit edgy, that sort of conversation with him. But with the help of this teaching, I could be very gentle and firm, and you know, he was able to accept it. In fact, he respected me for taking that stance, which is a big step forward for us.
That's really good. Yes.
Mm. Yes.
Yes.
So thanks, Jenny. Thank you very
Mm.
much.
I'd like to add something, David. Uh, Something Rupert said yesterday night too. It doesn't have to do with what you do or what you say, but he was uh, explaining how when you are in um, in your own being aware of being aware, that it sort of spreads around you and to your son, with, even if you don't talk or don't do anything, when you're playing golf together, or even when he's not in the house, that this energy field reaches your son, even if he doesn't think about it or talk about it. So that one of the best ways of helping would be to really being in your own established being aware, you know, that is sort of.
Well, one of the wonderful things that has happened since I've been really taking this seriously and playfully is my golf's improved considerably, you know, because I'm in the moment, right?
Yes.
That's the doorway to the gateway to my son's respect. So how are you doing that, Dad? You know, he's very curious, so I get a chance to sort of sneak it in the back door that way. But what you've shared is very helpful, and I can really see that. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Deborah. Lovely to see you.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks again for doing this. I love seeing everybody. It's great, you know, really enjoying it. I think, well, I'm another introvert, I think, so I'm kind of loving that space at home and just to do a little bit of art and all that sort of thing. But I think there's kind of a real rawness about things at the moment. People are being, there's no chance necessarily to cover up as such, you know, cover up activity or going out or something. People are having to sort of perhaps look at themselves a little bit more and just I don't know, just an opportunity to contemplate, perhaps, if they can. I think it's and I've noticed a lot more kindness, you know, a lot more. Because my husband's been unwell, we've still had to travel about an hour and a half to the hospital to have, you know, he's recovering well, but there's sort of follow-up because there's a major surgery and so on. And as you go in, of course, everyone does your temperature, but they sit you about 1 metre apart. And even though it's 1.5 here in Australia that we're supposed to be, and one man comes in coughing and all that kind of thing, and but they put a mask on him, so you're sort of exposing yourself somewhat, and so are some of those nurses, even though they wear masks, but you see them still busy working, and nurses come to our home a couple of times a week for bandage dressing and so on. So we're probably meeting with people a little more than the ordinary, but I see a lot of, you know, people being thoughtful of others and perhaps taking the time to talk and chat where they might not before. And there's an understanding, sort of a commonality, I would say, about it all. There's a real commonality, and I just it's sort of allowing things to breathe a little bit more, I think, and so however long it goes on for. And I mean, yes, we have children and grandchildren, and you know, my son sort of now as a jeweler's not, it's a whole thing with the business, and he's got to support children and things like that. So there are concerns, but it's kind of, you're in that don't know situation. You just have to do the best that you can for where you are and see how it all unfolds. And so it's a very, but there's so many more in that position and in much more dire circumstances. So I think we're all in it together one way or another in that
Mm.
sense, which has never happened before in this world. You know, it's quite an amazing time, really. It's really quite amazing. But yeah, but I'm loving, you know, I'm sure that this teaching over the years has brought greater peace to me, and just that underlying peace. That doesn't mean that I don't get, you know, anxious at times or this and that and so on. But and I think if you be that peace, I agree with Beatrice when she was saying about just be that peace, because I'm sure that is felt. I'm sure it's felt by
Mm.
people for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I think
yeah,
so. Mm.
yeah. So
Mm.
but it's great to see the others here, and thanks always for doing this, Jenny. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Good. Mhm.
Sorry, I came in late, but I'll add a comment. Sorry, I turned on the video, but it's obviously turned off somewhere in the depths of my computer.
Right. Yes, it's strange. It's marked as on the system. So, yes.
Anyway.
Hello, Desmond.
Hello. I was quite, let's say inspired. I think you were there, Jenny, at the webinar, the Australian Friendly Time one last Monday,
Yes.
where his initial talk was very firm, I thought, about not allowing any disturbance whatsoever. Well, yes, not allowing any disturbance whatsoever. I tried to hear the replay, but last time I checked, it hasn't. Apparently, there was a sound issue, so it may be lost forever. But
Yes, I don't have the replay either, Desmond, so I don't know what's happened to it.
but I guess what it addressed for me was it's nothing new, but it's come a bit more with this isolation business of, you know, the constant little disgruntlements and comments and negativity. But, you know, no big deals, no huge emotional disturbances. But like I say, he suggested having no complaints whatsoever was the intelligent way to go.
Yes.
Which I have no argument with. It's the mind sort of wants to keep on presenting this stuff and does, but so it felt a bit like Rupert's equivalent of a fire-breathing sermon.
Yes,
not,
yes.
not to scare us about a hell in the afterlife, but a warning about the hell that we present to ourselves, the mind presents to us every day with these.
Yes, and once you let go of that kind of resistance, then often what happens is that some kind of solution or mitigation just turns up in the mind, doesn't it?
I can't say that's my experience, but
Oh, okay.
unless you mean things like, for example,
just practical just practical things.
Like I could go for a walk, which mightn't have crossed the mind when I was disgruntled about being bored. Or
Yes, yes, exactly. You just you suddenly see beautiful sun out of the window. Oh, right, I'll go out, and then you go out, you go for a walk, and everything looks beautiful. Everything I found seemed magnified because I felt, well, I'm one of the people that's at risk from this. Obviously, I'm very careful and cautious as far as I can be. But in a few weeks or months, um, this body mind could be no longer, and why not enjoy everything now? But I don't even need to think about it. It's something that just came to me. The bird song is more vibrant. The leaves on the trees, the sun shining through the trees, the lake, the flowers. Everything seemed magnified, and it's really stayed that way. I go for a walk almost every day, um, and it's remained like that, sort of seeing things as if for the first time. So I think if once resistance goes, then the mind can relax, and something like that can come in. But also practical things. The supermarket I normally go to um, wouldn't uh, wouldn't communicate with any of its customers to go on to the delivery service. They put some on and some not, prioritize some are not. And I wrote to them, tried to contact them, and it was obviously not going to work. So I looked at the other supermarkets, couldn't find anything, and then just by chance I clicked on one that I clicked on before, and they gave a phone number for registering yourself as someone who's vulnerable. They gave information on how they what they needed to check that it was true, your age and so on. Um, and um, and now I can get everything I want delivered to my door, because obviously shops are the main way in which you can pick up the virus nowadays. So that just happened. It happened sort of by chance. But if I'd been resistant, completely resistant, then I would have stayed just angry with my normal supermarket and not continued trying, and angry that when I tried the other ones, they wouldn't help either. But then suddenly this one did,
Right.
and it, it was just a letting go, really, and not expecting, I think. And I think that's what I found has made a difference, just that letting go and not expecting.
Right. And I'm sure Rupert says this in some way, but the old saying about the universe never makes a mistake. It's
Yes, it never, well, it never comments on anything. There's no there's no comment on the content of experience. Um, so there can't be any mistakes. Mistakes always arise from comment and judgment, almost by definition.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, I've got the floor.
Hello.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, Rita. Hi, lovely to see you.
Oh, please, was I interrupting the other person?
No, it's fine. No.
Yeah, I was just feeling a bit overwhelmed with this stay at home because I have two kids, 6 years old, and they're doing school from home
Mhm.
from 8 to 2 p.m. So it was a big adjustment because I'm not sure I know how to teach 6-year-olds. So so I feel frustrated all the time. I mean, because they're supposed to do some things and they wouldn't do it. They just want to play in the house. But now I'm a bit relaxed, with the school assignments. So I also attended the webinar by Rupert last
Hmm.
Monday, and something stayed as a question in my mind because he said, experiment, do this experiment, that we stop drawing or expecting happiness to come from external situation, which is at the moment it's not a good situation out there. So stop expecting that. But even he even said that, to say to yourself that I like what is happening, which is a bit hard for me to maybe if I say I accept what is happening, including the frustration with doing school from home. That's okay, but but I cannot make myself say I like what is happening, including the pandemic, because I don't know. It doesn't sit well. That statement when Rupert said, "I like what is happening."
I agree with you, and I don't think he means it in
Mm,
quite that way. I think what he's trying to point to is that uh, consciousness or awareness, what we really are, has no agenda with what is happening. What is happening is happening. Um, I don't think he means that the mind has to like it, and I don't think the mind can like it from a logical point of view. Then
mm,
it's something that the mind will object to or automatically, and it should object to. It's that objection, for example, which is propelling scientists to look for treatments, to look for a vaccine,
mm,
and to mitigate the situation, and politicians to mitigate the situation. It's that the mind saying no. No, we have to address this, and I think that's absolutely correct.
mm,
But that doesn't mean to say that we feel that we are the mind. We allow the mind to do all of that mitigation. In your case, with your children, then the mind says, well, I must. I don't like the fact that my children don't want to do their schoolwork because they will get behind everyone else, and that wouldn't be good for them in the future. So I need to find a way to encourage them to work and to be interested in the lessons. And that's a good use of the mind. It's there's a video, I can't remember the title of it, but there's a video in which Rupert says, no, there's, from a practical point of view, resistance is sometimes necessary.
mm,
And in that case it is. But if you if the mind relaxes, if the mind um, stops being annoyed or frustrated or angry about it, then what can happen is into that space, that a space is created, and into that space a
mm,
solution will arise, which will enable you to change the situation. So I think it's more that, it's more seeing that I awareness um, am not affected at all by what's going on, even though mind is trying to act appropriately, find an appropriate solution.
yeah. So I guess for me it's to recognize what is it that doesn't like what's happening. It's actually the mind, right?
Yes,
Not really the essence,
yeah,
not really the being, but it's the mind that doesn't like something, whether it's the
yes,
pandemic or whether the children that don't want to do schoolwork. That's the activity of the
yes,
mind.
and then
to
give the mind a
recognize that.
rest, and then give the mind a
Mm,
rest, because then in that rest, then solutions will come in, and so there's never
mm,
really a feeling of rejection of that. That's what's important, that there isn't a
mm,
feeling of rejection
mm,
in the body, that it's just the mind. It finds it rests, and in that rest there's an appropriate solution that
mm,
arises. Yeah, and
mm.
it
Yeah.
can be fun. It will bring you closer to your children, surely, won't it?
Mhm.
And you will learn so much about children, and about how to teach them, and that will be things that in the future, could be very useful to you. There's
Mhm.
always there's so much opportunity for learning, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I want to say that I really like the quote at the end of the paper, the contemplation, the Utpala Deva's garland of hymns to Shiva.
Yes,
Um, because that was, I mean, that quote is like from the bhakti, like the bhakti or devotional path, and it's
yes,
very familiar to me. And then there's the Rupert's rendition, which then feels different from the first one. So,
that's
but
interesting.
yeah,
Mm.
but reading both, it really feels good to read both.
Yes. In what way did you think it felt different from the first one?
Yeah, the first one, there is still a duality, that there is me and there is you. Being immersed in you,
Mhm.
may I be free of desires for anything other than what is. So because I used to be in this devotional path of Sufism, which is like this.
Mhm.
I mean, a lot of the text is like this. That
Yes,
wherever you see is the God's face,
yes, yes.
something like that. So there is
Wherever the eye
also that,
falls is the face of God.
right?
Yes. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very similar. So it has this sweet memory in me about that path. And
Mm.
then the second one is really something that makes me independent, make me, because it's talking just about abiding in and as myself alone. So there's
Yes,
nothing outside you, I mean outside myself.
yes, yes,
Yeah. But there is still a sweet memory of the first quote. It's like there's a love affair in the first quote.
yes, yes. And I think he says, or has said in the past, that the challenge for everyone on the path of bhakti
Hmm.
is to merge the object of devotion with the
Hmm.
devotee, and so that's what this second quote is doing, isn't it? Uh,
Yeah.
it's explaining, it's describing that merging. Yes.
Yeah. So moving from the first to the second one, uh, yeah, I had a long time to to adjust from like leaning on the beloved, and now
Yes.
suddenly there's nobody out there, but just this I, uh, which I needed to like find more and be more confident.
Hmm.
So at first it was really unsettling to lose
Yes.
the
Yes.
beloved.
Hmm.
Mm. Thank you for the contemplation. It's
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it sits with me for a little while. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I don't. Can I say something, Jenny?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I still love that idea of leaning on the beloved, and I know it's just me, but it sort of kind of opens my heart. It just
Mm.
it it enables me to, I don't know, it's got a different presence about it. And even though I'm fully aware, so though it's sort of like poetry, it does that same thing, that takes you to a space. It's not meaning that you really you realize that it's just you, but I think it has a place still, even though I understand that I am awareness. I think it's got a place. I don't know whether or not you find that too, a reader, but yeah, yes, I still love that sort of thing.
I think it does have a place,
Yeah.
Deborah. It has that emotional feel, and as long as that merging has taken place, then it really feels much more like an expansion, doesn't it? Rather than a going out to some other being, it feels more like an expansion of your own being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even though you use perhaps those words, or
Yes.
that terminology, I think it brings a greater depth. It doesn't make it so clinical. It actually creates a warmth and a presence, I think, to me. Anyway, that does for me. I'm not sure, but I do love some of the Sufi sayings too, because they've got that sort of romanticism about them in some way. It's very beautiful. Very beautiful.
Yeah. It's just that the love is now the lover and the beloved.
Yes.
It feels one. So, or everything is the beloved.
Yes.
So
it feels like a
Jenny
dance.
said, it's an expansion. Yeah. Because
Sorry to interrupt
everything is the beloved. So that's okay.
Yeah.
I seem to remember, Deborah, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jenny, but Rupert's quoting from Baliani, which obviously he loves so much, but he says something like this, that the love with which I love thee, God, is your love. It is, yeah. In other words,
beautiful.
It's not, yeah, you got it,
beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. That really spoke to me too, yeah.
Me too.
I'm hearing some jazz. I don't know whether I'm hallucinating or not, because there's somebody playing some music in the background. Oh, it's gone now.
Yes, I think it was.
That's my husband, who loves. He's very. He loves music, and his whole setup is to get an incredible fine sound. So he's not only a jazz lover; he loves all of the beautiful classical music and any good music, but it's got to be good sound with not too much compression, top or bottom, and he's a bit obsessive at making sure even all of his LPs are so clean and the needle goes down so the sound is best. So he's a bit of a hi-fi. He loves that sort of thing anyway. So yes, that's in the other room. So yes. I'll mute so you can have the mute again.
Yep. I'm very happy to see you, Arida. It's been a long time, and I remember the moment in Buckland Hall where you sort of offered Baliani to Rupert, and he took the book, and he couldn't stop citing from it because he was yeah. But anyway, I would like to add something about, you said your impression was that he said that you would have to like your circumstances. And what comes up for me is that for me it is this image he has where he compares liking or not liking to the room, space in a room, that the room doesn't negotiate with me coming in or you going out, and that our being is like that we are basically welcoming, that is what we are. So on that level, it's almost beyond liking, but more like welcoming. So that came up when you were saying that about, and I can see you running around with the 6-year-old. I have eight grandchildren, and their parents are climbing the walls by now, having them in the house. So it's a very different ballgame than what we at our age and our circumstances are very different. But I'm to me, this whole metaphor of the room and the things that coming, and that the space doesn't have the ability to welcome or not welcome. The thing they're just there. So I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Beatrice. Nice to see you again.
While people are enjoying the silence, I'll interrupt it for a moment. One of the rather nasty thing that's happening in Australia is the racism. I'm married to a Chinese woman, and she's quite westernized, and but she's very Chinese. And in Melbourne, just I think yesterday or something, there's been a really overt attack on this woman just because she's Chinese, and it was physical violence. This young man, really attacked this young woman, and yelling, go back home, and just horrible. So she's feeling a bit vulnerable. I mean, she's not going out unless I'm with her, and so this is really an awful development. I'm just wondering if that's happening in any other countries.
I think it is, David, in the in the UK. Before this happened, there was Brexit, and that was very much based on a hatred of people of other nationalities. It's a sort of little England mentality that's keeping England for the English. And so that energy was already there, and there was a certain amount of nationalism which was rising up in other parts of Europe. And then if we look over to the US, then again you see that energy in Trump and his attitude, America first, and his attitude, of course, towards the Mexicans. So I feel it was a kind of global wave of sort sort of xenophobic
Mm.
energy, which was just happening. And then, of course, the virus arises, and immediately that xenophobic energy is then focused on the source of the virus. So, but I think it was there all along, and I feel that these waves are not waves that are caused by any individuals, any world leaders or anything like that. They just happen. They're just part of the activity of consciousness. So that consciousness vibrates naturally. Well, waves of vibration is waves. That's another description of vibration. So you get economic waves, you get waves in terms of the earth itself, the geological ages. Everything works in a wave fashion, and that feels to me to be where we are now. So I think seeing it from that perspective, then you're not blaming anyone or any group of people for those waves and those attitudes. You're seeing it as part of the overall activity of consciousness. It's what's arising. There's not a blame associated with it, but at the same time you have the freedom to go back to, well, as Beatrice has said, to being that empty space of awareness, the stillness, that empty space of awareness in which no waves are arising at all. And that's somewhere we can go back to whenever we want to, whenever we feel a need to. But having gone back there and coming out back into experience, back into the world where all of these waves of experiencing are happening, then we don't really lose touch with that stillness, that unmovingness of what awareness really is. That's how it feels to me.
That makes sense. Yes, thanks, Jenny.
Also, David, I just see it similar to like a huge separate self that is feeling that it's in danger. Because when I look around me, there is more and more mingling of the races. When I am in the streets or in town, there are many different colors of the skin, and there are many now for the third or the fourth generation, and in Australia too, I think, where the white race is not so present anymore as it used to be in the 50s. Like in the 50s, in Holland at least, there was just white people, and now it's a huge palette of colors, and my own grandchildren have different colors, and it sort of is spreading this whole. And when you look at the people who react so violently, often they are white and they are afraid. There's a big fear, like in the United States, a lot of that. What do you call that, Jenny?
Xenophobia, yes.
Is from poor or white people who feel threatened in their existence, like a huge global separate self, afraid of losing their existence, which is true. And so that makes it possible to look with compassion and the way to, it's also a way for me to relate to that from by just knowing that of course there's no separate self, and to seek the connection from what is similar in all of us. And it still makes it hard if you or some of your loved ones are being attacked in the street. Of course you'll take a stand and resist it, but from a place of understanding the fear of that separate feeling of the people who feel threatened. So that makes it easier for me to not get angry, or just, yeah, putting it in perspective somehow.
Yes.
And not looking down on it, for instance. There was a time when I sat on my high horse and thought, oh, those people are so, so narrow-minded, sort of thing. And that has nothing to do with it at all, yeah.
I agree, Beatrice. I think we're just one big melting pot in many ways. I mean, I've got Iranian grandchildren. My daughter married an Iranian, and my son has best friends that are many Chinese friends, and my other son has a Jewish girlfriend, and on it goes. And it's just it's a wonderful thing, actually. It's another in this sort of temporary world that broadens your understanding and makes you see that it's not our own little limited world. You know, it's so much more diverse, but it is definitely fear on a global scale. I agree with you. When people do that sort of thing, it's evidence of incredible fear. And I guess as you do have to just protect and I'm in a practical sense, but understanding that that oneness or that awareness, then it does certainly help a great deal.
Mm.
Yes, I'm struck by the sort of the opposites being constellated. It's like we've never been more together as a world community in a way, and yet at the same time there's this sort of social isolation, there's boundaries and hunkering down, and you know, it's helpful, Jenny, I think, to look at it that way, of patterns being just expressing themselves, and taking that sort of very broad view. It helps not to get caught up in one or other of those polarities. I think that's a very valuable way of looking at it. But I guess, you know, the so-called leaders, I mean, they do play a role, don't they, in terms of influencing public opinion, and I think there's times like this where there does need to be some sort of a stance, and you know, I think the people should really not put up with that sort of thing. I don't think it's something that should go without some sort of comment from, you know, from the policymakers, because it seems that if it's unchecked, if we just go straight to acceptance, then I'm not sure that that's an enlightened view either. So,
I agree with you, David. I don't think acceptance is. I think what's important is truth, and what we're getting from the world leaders is nothing close to truth at the moment. And but truth does surface. I mean, we used to be able to rely reasonably on the BBC for truth. In the UK we can't anymore. It's become an agency of government. So we have to find other places, and it's the role of other organizations and other people leading them to present the truth in the best way that that they can, and there are people doing that, but I think their voices are not as strong as the voices of the governments around the world. I mean, the UK is particularly bad, and the US is particularly bad. I don't think Holland is quite as bad as us. I don't get that impression. I don't think Germany is either. But it's not something we can change, but we can. When I hear anyone just parroting the government line, which is untruth, then I do explain to them. I don't mean usually not usually from the point of view of this teaching, but just from the point of view of science or economics or whatever the issue is. Then I will explain to them from the reality and explain how they can check it out for themselves, and not to believe what they're told. So I think we can all play our role in a tiny way, like that. Never admitting, never condoning untruth. So some of you here who haven't really said anything, would you like to say something? Maria, Sharada.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Maria.
This is the first time I'm with you.
It's lovely to see you.
I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you fine, yes.
Good. I'm from Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have lockdowns like rest of you. We have voluntarily that we don't gather, and we stay 1.5 meters from each other.
Mm-hmm.
But the stores are open, the schools are open, and workplaces. I work as usual. I had an encounter with the beautiful COVID-19, I think, because I was sick for 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't get tested in Sweden if we don't end up in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't bad enough to go to hospital?
No.
No.
But I had trouble breathing a bit. So it's an opportunity to, let go of things.
Yes, yes.
It's a beautiful experience to go close to the body dissolving or the dying of the body. And to me, it was painful first, but then I let go of things, and it allowed me to go deeper into awareness, into
yes, yes.
So for me, it was a good experience.
That's very good.
I'm so thankful for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then I don't know if I had it or not, or if so I'm still careful. So we stay home. We don't have family gatherings and stuff like that.
Yes, it's sensible to be still careful, even if you
Yeah.
have had it, because it's not known whether having it actually gives you any immunity or
No.
not. Some people think it does, but there's actually no evidence at the moment about that. So it's very sensible to be careful. Yes.
Yeah.
But when you're ill like that, as you said, it is a good opportunity, because there's you have to give up. The body can't get on and do things because it's just completely knocked out, isn't it? So you have, there is a giving up there, and that really is an opportunity to sink back into what you truly are. So I can see how you feel that was a good and useful experience.
Yes, it released a lot of fear of dying.
Mm-hmm.
So now I feel like I can open up to life more, and I listen a lot to Rupert right now.
That's good.
Yeah, he has a wonderful way of putting it.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Jenny, for doing this and bringing us together like this.
You're very welcome, and it's lovely to see everyone like this.
Yeah, it is.
It's really great. Are you joining in any of Rupert's webinars or retreats at home?
No, I haven't got. I don't know if it's the money, because I have a lot of or if it's I'm listening a lot on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, and I think I'm saving money so I can go and see him, for real. So when this is over,
Yes.
so that's what I'm like to do, I think.
Yes. Yes.
And also I'm saving money for. I'm a mindfulness instructor, but I want to add to my education so I can help people dealing with stress, and start my own business in that in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So
But the webinars are just by donation, and you can make a very small donation
okay.
and
I haven't really looked into it.
join that.
Yeah.
So I think there's one at I think probably a similar time to this on Monday.
Oh, okay.
So
I don't
that's
know why.
possible, and there are some on
Maybe.
Thursday which are 4 o'clock UK time. I'm not sure what time it is in Sweden.
I think that's 5 p.m. So that's a good
Yes.
time.
Yes. So
Just,
those look on the website. It's
yes,
a
I will
very. I mean, the
absolutely do
minimum
that.
donation is a very, very tiny amount.
Yes.
So yeah, I think
Didn't know that, so I'm glad I spoke to you. So
yes.
the information.
Well, I hope to see you on one of them. And then you have a chance to ask Rupert a question, which is nice.
Yes.
Yes.
And thank you again for doing this. And I hope you have a nice weekend.
And I hope you too. I'm sure you will. It's lovely to see you so happy.
I am.
Good. Very good.
Thank you so much.
As Rupert once said, that happiness is the real sign of spiritual progress. Anyone else like to say anything more? Or should we leave it there?
I'm going to draw Sharada in by commenting on the picture of Einstein just above her head. I can't, can't ignore that. I'd love to hear the story of that.
Oh gosh.
If you want to share it.
All right. This is my mom's house, David. This
Oh,
is
I
where I
see.
grew up. Yeah. So I've been here for a month now because of the shutdown. My parents are really, really old. So I moved in here to look after them during the shutdown. And yeah, this is my old room. So this is a picture I had of Einstein when I was in college. Like that's many decades ago. Yeah. So that's the story.
Did
Yeah, well,
you did
it's
you
interesting.
study mathematics or science in college? So you
Yeah,
liked?
yeah. I did, Jenny. I was an engineering student.
Ah,
And
yes.
I loved maths, but over the years that has sort of just dropped away, and I have very little interest in science or maths. It's more literature and mythology and things like that later, which started surfacing on its own, I suppose. Um, but since we are talking about the virus, yeah, I'll have to admit that um, I'm close to 60 now. I'm 58, but and I see my parents normally see them about an hour a week, and like things are good. Like the rest of the family is also here, and we all it's just a family. But this being alone with them, they're both in their 80s. Alone with them for a month has just brought out so much anger in all of us. Oh my gosh, it's just made me feel like about this big. But I'm normally quite a gentle person, a very calm person. But there's been so much happening there, like I suppose their equation, and then I get into the middle of that, and it's sort of not been great. And the thing which has kept me calm is doing Rupert's meditations every day. So when I sit down with, I've got both those sets of CDs. So I do
Yes.
something other like once or even twice a day. And then it helps me through it. But I have felt kind of ashamed, I suppose, a little bad that it hasn't helped me overall, as in I'm not able to stay with that.
Instead of staying with it, Sharada, how about seeing it a different way? And whenever you suddenly notice, when you're dealing with your parents, for example, well, whenever you notice that some anger or irritation is arising, the fact that you've seen it really connects with that feeling of being myself, which you experience during the meditation. So why not then just perhaps go away and say to your parents, okay, I need a moment, and then you go to another room and you just sit down with yourself, and you use some of the ideas from the meditation, or else you just sink back into silence, into the silence of myself. And then once that calmness has come back, then you go back and you talk to your parents again. Because if we try to stay with something, then what happens is that inevitably we go away from it, and then we feel ourselves to be a failure, and that actually makes things worse, because that really strengthens the sense of separation. But if we just say, well, no, that it doesn't matter, whatever's arising is arising, but when I notice that all this anger is arising, then that's a sensible thing to do. And even if it's just a couple of times a day during the day that you notice it, and you go away and you sit down quietly, that I think that will change. That will change things for you, and ultimately will change your relationship with your parents, and perhaps their relationship with each other also. So I think it can be a tremendously positive opportunity, staying with them and looking after them. But do you have some other outlet, as apart from listening to Rupert's meditation, something
Well,
else that you do for yourself, which is not to do with the parents?
yeah, I just finished my crochet blankie, which I've been putting off for months and months. This 1 month, I sort of sped ahead with it, and I finished my blanket. I just finished it a couple of days back, and I've
Mm-hmm.
started my new crochet project, because yeah, that's something I enjoy, but I don't often get the time to sit like this and do it. So I've been doing that, and yeah, so things
Well,
like that.
that's good. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So I do have creative time for myself,
That's
and
really good. That's important. Mm,
that's really been helpful.
mm,
And yeah, doing something I love is absolutely. And then of course keeping in touch with the rest of the family, like with my kids and grandchildren and all that, like on the phone and all that, has been good also.
mm,
I think it's just made me feel that, like, I mean, all of a sudden I decided I wanted to come and spend this time here with them. I live in the same town, and like about half an hour's drive away. And when I heard the news that there was a shutdown, like when we heard the thing on the TV, the news came out, I didn't know what I was doing. I just packed my bags, and then half an hour later I was here, and I said, okay, I'm gonna stay here with you guys. That was it. I'm not sure why I did it and how welcome I was, like how helpful I'm being. I don't know any of those things, but I just know it happened.
mm.
So I'm kind of thinking, okay, something had better come out of all this, like something good for them and for me. I'm not sure if it is, but
Well,
yeah.
I think it is. I think something good is coming out, because you're considering these things, and you're looking. It's a huge test of the teaching, isn't it? Applying it in these very different circumstances, very different from your normal life. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is, Jenny. I mean, it's a huge test, that's for sure.
Mm,
And I am actually doing what you just suggested. That's
mhm,
really helpful. Like you said, I mean, it's not something I thought of. I just tend to do it. Like when things are getting a little heated up, I
mhm.
just come back into my room and sit and look out of the window, just stare into the silence, as it were. For some reason, that's so very soothing. And then,
Yes.
and then when I go out, I notice they also like feel like a much more. Everyone has calmed down. Really, I mean, things seem like a lot more comfortable for all of us. Like when we each have our own space in that sense. So yeah, that's how the
Yes.
lockdown is going on.
Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Mm.
I guess it's also given me a different perspective of my country, like because I see the way India, because I see the way people are. I mean, most people are not privileged like I am to live in comfort and to have proper food and all that. Most
Mhm.
people are not. I mean, but everyone is just taking it as something that has to be done. That's it. And people are helping each other out. I mean, everyone goes and feeds. Like my mom is 88 and she does most of the cooking herself. She's 84,
Mhm.
and she cooks for the dogs on the streets outside, because we have this huge pack which is around this area, like the other
Mm.
race course dogs. So she takes food for them, and very often they turn it down because they've already had a feast. I mean, we see people drive up in cars and then feed the dogs and go. And I'm sure if they're feeding dogs here, they are feeding all sorts, like everywhere. So people are sort of, it's been really really nice to see the things that people are doing. I haven't seen much of, like, we're not allowed out for walks or anything. You can go out maybe once a week to shop, and that's it. No
Mhm.
exercise, like that's not permitted here. But by and large, everyone seems to be so helpful and so together in some, in a very nice way. So yeah.
That's lovely. Mm.
There's
Mm.
Thank you for sharing your difficulties with your parents in your house. I mean, those are the most, in my experience, the most difficult, yeah, parts of life to colonize, and just to move in with your parents and being so close, and all the childhood stuff coming up, and it's really a challenge. And thank you for sharing that. I'm very happy that you opened your mouth before our own
I
life. Yeah,
I
thank you.
have to thank David for pointing out to the Einstein picture and making.
Yeah,
Or
thank you.
maybe you can have a little chat to Einstein upstairs and tell him to send us the cure for the vaccine. Get it going. I'm sure he could work it out. Yeah, he was not only a scientist. I think he was something special, wasn't he? He was.
Yes, yes. Mm.
He, yeah, he was a pretty non-dual sort of being. I imagine. What do you think, Jenny?
I think he probably was. A lot of the things that are attributed, a lot of the sayings that are attributed to Einstein, he didn't actually say, but
Oh.
a lot of things he did say were very beautiful.
Mm.
Particularly, there's one that Rupert quotes about common sense being a prejudice that everyone learns by the age of 17 or something like that. Anyway, so there are, yes, he was brilliant, and I think that brilliance came from a mind that was open, that was not totally bound by belief, and was open to something new, and was quiet. So that's beautiful in itself.
Can I share just a little story with Sharada? Do you mind?
I do.
Just wanted to let you know that when I married my wife, we went to a conference, a sort of it's a bit like a Rupert retreat, and she fell in love with the Sanskrit writing. You know, the cursive is just a beautiful writing, and so a friend of hers gave her this book with all names in it, and we sat down together, and she said to me, you know, if you like, you can pick a nice name. So I did a meditation, and I just closed my eyes and opened the book without looking, and just put my finger on one of the names, and the name came up, Lakshmi. And the goddess of abundance, and you know, and I tell you what, she's absolutely that for me. So, but she's a Chinese lady with an Indian name, and it always draws, you know, it always is a great conversation starter, you know? And that's how it happened. But of course, you know, Lakshmi.
Oh, that's a lovely story. Is she Indian?
No, she's Chinese, but she's
Okay.
certainly she's
Okay,
certainly got
Lakshmi,
Indian name,
absolutely.
yeah, and she's you know, she's the goddess around here.
Okay, okay. The
That's
most auspicious name. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
My name, by the way, is, I mean, it's not important, but it's Sharada.
Sharada.
Yeah.
Sharada, right?
Oh,
And
okay, I'm sorry about that.
no, it's not the tomato. It's another name for Saraswati, who's the goddess of wisdom and learning. So
Oh,
Sharada
lovely.
refers to Saraswati. Yeah, that's the thing.
Right.
And pretty much all of us are named after gods and goddesses. Hindus are. So yeah, we've got enough of them to go around. So
Well, shall we stop there, or is there anything else anyone wants to say? we go, or be all happy?
I just want to say thank you again, Jenny, for all that you do and all the wonderful work you do online and on Facebook. And I'm amazed how deep and comprehensive all your responses are. It's just like a fountain of wisdom that I tap into, and such a wonderful resource. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you,
Appreciate it.
David, and
Thank
it's
you,
it's
Jenny.
lovely to see you. Lovely to see all of you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for providing the space, and this is really a lovely space to just be with all of you and just like absorb the energy. It's really good. Thank you.
Lovely to have you here, Rita.